Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. If Putin decides to make a move into Ukraine, how long does the U.S. believe that the Ukrainians could hold off a full Russian takeover?
Jackie, it's a great question. I would really point you to the Department of Defense to make any assessment if they can. And obviously some assessments they may not be in a position to make publicly.
They would not want to share publicly, or that they don't know?
Again, I'm just conveying that there are some assessments, and obviously you, as the Department of Defense, does a range of contingency planning. I'll let them speak for themselves on what they could lay out publicly for you.
And then we've known about the reality of this threat since October. Putin began amassing troops on the border in April. So why have we waited so long to send the kind of aid that we're sending now? Why haven't we sent, for instance, anti-aircraft weaponry? Because if Russia does an airstrike, wouldn't they be able to obliterate what we've sent to them so far?
Well, remember the president met with President Zelensky back in, I think it was September, but you can correct me if that's wrong. It was sometime early in the fall, and committed to a large aid package. That is something that we've been implementing and delivering since that point in time. So actually it's been continuous security assistance that we've been providing to the Ukrainians, an enormous package that we've been providing over the course of the last year. In terms of weapon systems, I had again pointed to the Department of Defense.
The feeling within the administration is that we have responded in a timely manner to Ukraine's concerns.
I think what's important for people to understand is that this has been continuous. It wasn't that we had never provided aid, whether it's humanitarian or security assistance, and all of a sudden we did recently. That has been a continuous process. We've provided hundreds of billions of dollars in aid, security assistance over the course of not just the last year, but long before that, and including a commitment the president made and was announced around President Zelensky's visit.
And then moving on to energy, I mean, gas prices are at a 7-year high here in the U.S. Right after OPEC again snubbed requests to increase production. And then there's this energy crisis in Western Europe brewing. Is there any point where the president would consider opening up domestic production in order to mitigate some of this, the inflation, and assist our allies in Western Europe?
Well, there's a couple of important questions you raised there. Let me start by saying that as it relates to Europe and the shortage, and that is, or potential, I should say, it doesn't exist currently, or everybody's experiencing high gas prices, but I think you're asking as it relates to a potential invasion. That is something we've been very mindful of and in touch with our European partners and also suppliers about what can be done and how we can ensure or take steps to increase capacity out there to meet those needs should they raise. Some of them is natural gas, some of them is gas, as you know. So that is something we've been quite mindful of. I'd also note that the president has taken a number of steps in recent months to address the gas prices, including tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, of course conveying clearly to OPEC member countries and suppliers that it's important to meet the demand on the market, and we'll continue to look at options that can be done to lower gas prices for the American people. In terms of whether or not there could be more oil drilling, I'd point you to the oil companies on what available places they have and if they're maximizing that. My understanding is they're not.
Is there any consideration for increasing, for instance, LNG export licenses?
I don't have anything to preview for you in terms of additional steps. I can just reiterate to you that the president raises and talks about the importance of taking every step we can to lower gas prices for the American people.
And then real quick on the Johns Hopkins study on the lockdowns. It was this meta-analysis that came out of several studies, lockdown during the first wave of COVID in spring of 2020. It found that it only reduced COVID mortality by 0.2% in the U.S. and Europe. And suggested they have little to no public health benefit, but severe consequences for the economy. And it suggests that lockdowns shouldn't be a part of a future pandemic response. Is that the shared view of the administration looking in the rearview mirror?
Well, I would first, of course, point you to our health and medical experts for specifics on this specific scientific study. I would note that the president has been clear we're not pushing lockdowns. We've not been pro-lockdown. That has not been his agenda. Most of the lockdowns actually happened under the previous president. What our objective has been is to conveying that we have the tools we need to keep our country open, thanks to the president's leadership and focus on fighting the virus. And that's reflected rooted in the fact that 98% of schools are open. Over 210 million Americans are fully vaccinated. We have the tools to avoid lockdowns, and we're not moving back, and that's our intention at this point.
So you guys do believe then that the lockdowns were more harmful than helpful?
Again, I would point you to our scientific experts on the specifics of a study, but the president's agenda, the president's approach has not been lockdowns. It has been using the tools we have to prevent that.